Hello, this is David Mastio, California editor for the Center Square, and this is California in Focus. As always, I'm joined by Kenneth Schrupp, a California reporter for the Center Square. Today we're talking about California's ongoing housing crisis. We could talk about this every week. So tell me, Kenneth, what did the California Association of Realtors find when they looked at housing affordability?
They found only 15% of Californians can afford to purchase the median home in the state, which is a decline from the previous quarter of 1% and 3% from the year before.
Did you say 50% or 15%?
Yeah, you heard that right. It's only 15% of Californians who can afford to buy the median home in the state. The median home in the state costs $843,600. And that means you have a household that needs a minimum annual income of $221,000 to afford that.
Is this the worst it's ever been?
No, it's not the worst it's ever been, although it's close. 2007, before the Great Financial Crisis, is the last time affordability really hit this low.
Is it likely to get better anytime soon?
It does not seem like it will. California has a 4.5 million unit housing shortage. We've massively increased our population since the 70s, despite mostly slowing housing construction since then. And unless we start building significantly more housing, things will just continue to get more expensive.
Isn't this a key driver of why people are leaving California?
Yes, it is. And it does not seem like cities are really deciding to take serious efforts to turn this around outside of places like the Central Valley, in the Inland Empire. The coastal cities that everyone wants to move to are simply not producing enough housing.
Do you know if the realtors included in their analysis the recent problems with getting housing insurance or home insurance?
They did not, as far as I could tell, but that's really an important point, which is that these fire insurance property rates have skyrocketed in recent years because the claims keep getting more and more expensive.
So it could actually be worse than the realtors said.
Affordability, if you include all the other things someone has to pay for, yes, that is going to make it much more expensive to own a home. Everything else is getting more expensive here. You have the energy that you need to upkeep your home. You have the water getting more expensive. If you're a homeowner or a property owner, you're squeezed on every front, not on just the house itself.
So to focus in a little bit on LA, they have an interesting approach to making housing more affordable.
Yes, the main approach in LA, which actually did have a significant expansion in housing production through an executive order signed by the mayor last year at the beginning of her term, this year, called ED1, which made it so that anything that's 100% affordable housing, aka housing that meets certain income levels based on area median income, that it can be built very rapidly, and simply not having to sit and wait for approvals and pay interest that whole time has allowed a lot of new projects for developers to pencil out. Another thing is, from ED1, you got these density bonuses as well, so you could build a lot more than you otherwise would have on these ED1 type projects. Second, though, and probably not so good, is the continuation of a ban on rent increases that has gone on since the beginning of COVID and is only expiring now in January of 2024. That means landlords have just been unable to raise their rent for a very long time. And once this new moratorium is lifted in January, they're only going to be able to increase it by 4% a year. And with landlords having not received so much rent during COVID because there was an eviction moratorium, and with many landlords struggling to pay rising taxes and other bills in this state, a lot of them are considering just selling. And that means they'll be bought up by just much larger developers, or people will just not want to invest in the state altogether.
Who did you talk to get a feel for what apartment owners were feeling about this?
I talked to Daniel Yukelson, who's the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles executive director. And what he had to say was bleak. He told me housing providers have had moratoriums that restricted their ability to collect rent and eliminated these rent increases while all their own expenses were rising out of control. Fees, utilities, taxes, just basic building goods and services, and that many of them just aren't able to make ends meet. A lot of these smaller independent owners who are small-time landlords have been forced to sell their properties either at discounts or foreclosure.
Is this rent control approach a COVID era creation, or does this go back farther in LA's history?
LA first adopted its RSO, or Rent Stabilization Ordinance, in 1979, which did tie maximum allowable rent increases to inflation. Landlords could raise their rents by up to 3% when inflation is below 3%, or up to 8% if inflation hits 8% or above. This ordinance was suspended at the start of COVID, but has been extended and extended again and again. It's finally now ending.
Do supporters of these restrictions point to any cities where rent control has worked out for moderate income people?
Rent control has not worked out for moderate income people anywhere, as far as any data can show. The affordable housing projects that are spearheaded by the mayor, where are income restrictions rather than restrictions on what the rent is, have proven to be a better financial way of encouraging developers to build something that can actually turn a profit.
Thank you, Kenneth. I'm David Mastio with the Center Square, and we've been talking with Kenneth Schrupp, California reporter for the Center Square. You can read his work at thecentersquare.com. Thank you for listening to California in Focus, and please subscribe to our podcast.